Welcome to Cheese In Depth. I'm Michael Landis, and today we're talking with Oliver Ford from Beehive Cheese. He's going to talk about his family, he's going to talk about cheese making, talk about the history, and we're going to taste some cheese. So I'm going to turn it over to Ollie. Ollie?
All right, thank you, Michael. So, introducing myself, I started when Beehive Cheese started. I was about 15 years old, and I didn't really have much of a choice at that time. But I apparently grew to love it because I'm still here. So when, we'll say back in 2005, 2006, 2005 is when the company was officially started, and 2006 is when they were ready to bring me and my brother and my cousins on board. A lot of the work at that time was strictly family. Over time, we brought a few other people on, but for the most part, it was a family affair in the beginning. And then I proceeded to make cheese for about 8 years with Beehive Cheese. And I think they did this on purpose, but they kind of stopped giving me any sort of raises for about 5 years. And it took me way too long to catch the hint that they wanted me to get out and spread my wings and learn about something other than a family business. So I took a break for about 3 to 4 years to pursue some of my passions of graphic design. So I was a graphic artist for a few years. And then once I was kind of getting rolling in my career, they approached me and asked me to come back. They offered me less money. I said that I didn't want to make cheese the rest of my life. I'd like to explore other parts of the business, and they said okay. And they hired me back and made me make cheese for 2 more years before they promoted or demoted me to sales. So that was my path with this company, and I will say since coming back, I've enjoyed it and appreciated it a lot more, and am a lot more invested in the passion that Tim and Pat had from the beginning, and I had to learn it myself. So the company, like Michael said, it's an Irish style cheddar, and it lends itself very well to the rubbed rind. Well, I guess it lends itself well in other ways, but the flavors take really well with the cheese style itself. Cheese brings people together. So actually this was a concept that we talked about 2 years ago, and we were trying to talk about what makes cheese special, what value does it bring to people. And we, after talking with tons and tons of people at demos and sampling to at different events, just asking people, why do you like cheese so much? And a lot of it was socially orientated. So they loved the social aspect. They loved to share it. They loved, typically with our cheeses, they liked the uniqueness of the cheese and able to share kind of an exciting new find with their friends and family. So from there, we kind of created our tagline, and we decided it was making friends with cheese, and really refocused our company. Even in business, our business-to-business interactions, we kind of see all interactions as friendships, and embraced this bringing people together and creating a culture of friendship. So inside and outside of our company, that's one of our main goals, and we're pretty happy with that and the direction it's been taking us throughout the last 2 years. Pat is my father, Tim is my uncle, and they come from not dairy backgrounds. Pat was in real estate, Tim was in software, and one day Tim had been doing a lot of research, and he was tired of software because he couldn't put his hands on it. it didn't seem real. So in looking for things to do wildly different than software, he came upon cheese, artisan cheese, and it was quite a bit of a departure. And then once he decided, you know, this is what we're doing, he called up Pat, who all through college in their younger years, they had started, you know, landscaping businesses together, and they'd worked together their whole lives, even before Tim married Pat's sister. So he called up Pat, and Pat was in the airport doing his job, flying on a trip, and said, I want you to quit your job and come make cheese with me. And Pat, being the trusting person, eternal optimist, said, okay, and then called my mom and said he's quitting his job and he's going to make cheese. And I'm sure everybody can know that might be a little bit of a shock to some wives and families, but they supported him. So the next portion of this is why a lot of people ask, why Utah? And the answer, the best answer that I've ever had is, why not Utah? We were here when they were first looking. They were looking in upstate New York, California, at places that they could start a creamery. And it took a dinner with my grandmother, who was not afraid to speak her mind, and said, why don't you just do it here? And that was actually the first time that thought had even occurred to anybody. It just wasn't an option because nobody had been doing it. But that resonated and took off. So now we're making cheese out of Ogden, Utah, and have since 2005 in the same location. I will say, kind of rolling back to the family's reaction, Carrie, my aunt, was a flight attendant, and she was at first very, I hate to say it, but like ashamed or embarrassed when her colleagues would ask her, what is your husband doing nowadays? And she'd say, he's making cheese. But now she has been converted, as has the entire family, and is very proud to say that we make cheese. So the obvious transition in starting a business is you decide what you want to do, you quit your job, and then the third step is you figure out how to do it. Kind of, but that's really the progression. This happened, and it became very clear very early that we had a lot to learn. I have a really funny story of when we first started and we had a press. The press probably weighed about a ton, 2,000 pounds full, and we loaded the press for the first time, and none of the whey was draining out of the cheese, and you need the whey to drain out. So we called an emergency, and all of our friends and families came down and helped us flip this press upside down so that the hoops could drain. The next day, when we were a little less tired from our first day of cheese making, we realized that we had just put the hoops in upside down, and we didn't actually have to flip the whole press over. So lots of learning experiences over the last 15 years. That takes us to the people who taught us about how to make cheese, and that would be some of our partnerships over the years. Like I said before, lots of families. So you'll see in this slide in the top left picture, please don't call OSHA. I think the statute of limitations is up. But there's my brother in the top left, Britton, my cousin, in the background, my little sister in the front, and other little sister in the back, and my other cousin right there. So that was the original cut team crew. And then below that picture, we've evolved and hired adults, and they, you know what, we're a really tight company. For example, many of the cheesemakers you see in the bottom left picture have been around since 2007, 8, and have moved into the managing position. We don't have any, let me make sure the statement is correct. Yeah, we don't have any of our upper management people in the company that have not done time making cheese. And we're very proud of that fact, that everybody knows what it takes to make a cheese and have that passion and love for what we do. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, the next one is partnerships.
Yes, it is. Hang on.
And the partnerships are really what have made our company a success. Without different, frankly, our business would not be as healthy. So starting on the left at Utah State University, we have built a lasting relationship with them. The first one being education. So you have a real estate and a software man, and they're trying to learn how to make an artisan cheese. So they took a 2-week advanced cheese making short course up at Utah State University. And after that, they were deciding what recipe to make. And when Utah State realized that we were actually serious about starting a creamery, they called us up and asked us if we would commercialize their promontory recipe. So promontory was an original recipe developed by Utah State. And it took half a second to yell yes. And they gave us the recipe and we started to work on it, which of course later down the road led us to do some more creative things to put our stamp on this product. The second partnership didn't happen till a little bit later. The second major lesson is we received milk from a dairy that wanted to sell to us, and it wasn't the best milk, and so it didn't make the best cheese. So we started having issues talking to Utah State, and actually we contacted the Utah health department and talked to our auditor and asked them where the just best quality dairy, clean, humane, nice was, and in tandem with Utah State and Gosner's and the health department, they directed us to Wade's Dairy. And they are nothing but exceptional. They're kind to their animals. They take very good care of them. They grow their feed on the site, on their own land, and we've been partnered with them ever since and have not had a single complaint. And the Beehive way, so the culture of trust and belonging. Personal initiative is huge. Like I said before, a lot of our managers at this company started as cheesemakers, and it's really hard. All of our employees spend a very long time here at Beehive Cheese, and I'm hoping that they will retire here. A lot of people I've worked with for the last, we'll say 14 years minus a couple in the middle. So from there, we have Wadeland's Dairy actually making the cheese. We have the people, we have the recipe. Now it's time to make it. And it's like I keep saying, the passion for making the cheese. It was kind of a romantic job. It was hard work, and you did sweat a lot in a nice, hot, steamy make room. But from the second you get in the morning to the end of the day, you know exactly what you need to do. And what that is I call it babysitting. You get the milk. You receive the milk from Wadeland's Dairy. It's clean, it's fresh. It came from an 11 p.m. milking, and it's starting to, it's whole and raw, and it's starting to pasteurize in our vats by 2 a.m. So from cow to the start of production, that milk has spent 3 hours in a tank. Pasteurized straight into the vat, and as soon as you add your cheese cultures, essentially all you're doing as a cheesemaker is, and maybe this will be controversial and someone will talk to me after, I welcome it, but you're babysitting the cultures. You're trying to create the ideal environment for the cultures to thrive, because those cultures are what create your flavors. That's everything. So every step in the process is a different step based on what those cultures need. So temperature, time, amount of whey, the size of the curd cut, all the way through the process. We'll go a little bit more into detail on some of the steps in cheese making, but you really are just creating an ideal environment for those cultures to thrive. And like I was saying, it's a very peaceful job. I didn't know it at the time, but now, especially with this wonderful year, there's something to be said about a job that you know exactly what you have to do from the moment you wake up to the time you go home. So cheddaring is actually a step near the end of the process. And like piggybacking on what I said is the vat is warm and the air is typically colder than the vat. You have a lot of moisture inside those curds, so you don't want one side to be cold and the other side to be too hot. So you cut the whey, the curds are all cut, floating in whey, you drain the whey out, and you have curd that really likes to knit back together. So we take those big slabs, we cut them into manageable pieces, and we flip them every 10 minutes to try and keep the consistency of temperature and moisture uniform throughout. And that'll keep those cultures very happy, as just floating right in their comfort zone right there. Also at this stage, not to get too scientific, you have removed the whey. The whey is the food for the cultures. The lactose in the whey has been going in and out of those cheese curds, and you've removed the food, so you've determined the final acidity of the cheese, and you want to stop that acidity right where it's optimal with the flavor. And actually there's a frame on the right, which is right after cheddaring. You cut it into cheese curds and press it, and that's the end of the story for a wheel of cheese, other than aging. This is actually, that slide you were just showing was our current make room. When we first started, when I was first making, we had one vat, 1/3 the size of those vats, and there was no help in stirring at all, which was a lot of labor. I remember Tim and Pat would spend the day, an entire day, about a 12-hour day, stirring those vats, and then they'd walk outside at the end of the night and just lay on the concrete and look up at the sky thinking, what have we done? So we've come a long ways, and we have a little bit of help, but not much. We have a rake that stirs the curd to keep it from matting up. We still have to help them because it's not the best piece of equipment, so we still stir by hand. But it's an exclusively handmade product, and I would like to keep it that way. That's where it really starts to get exciting. This is when things really started to take shape, and our company began to create its own identity. The page 27 of the business plan, if anybody listening has met Tim Welsh, they'll know that he's a very thorough man, and he wrote up a long business plan. And on page 27 it said, win awards, answer phone. And it was quite a chuckle to read it. He threw it in there almost as a pipe dream, a pie in the sky. But no, in 2005, we started you know, this is their labor of love. This is their tangible thing that they can create. So they got this beautiful recipe and they wanted to put their stamp on it. So Tim grabbed some coffee laying around and some lavender, because why not? And rubbed it on a wheel of cheese and basically forgot about it. So then they find this wheel that was created, and they take it in 2006 to the American Cheese Society, or actually 2005. They had never been before. They were kind of wild-eyed and didn't feel like they fit in. And yeah, so they were new. Everybody knows what it's like to be new somewhere. And they had some people try the cheese, and it was a hit. So they went home, made 10 wheels, and took it to the American Cheese Society competition the following year and won first place in the flavored cheddar category. And that was kind of validating all their hard work up to this point. It had been about 2 years since they started this endeavor. They had paid themselves a grand total of $0 so far. And it was really validating to have somebody say, this is good. So then they took it, and they took that inspiration and they started to break all of the rules and started rubbing rinds and see what it was that they could, what else they could do and achieve. And these three cheeses are essentially a product of that kind of different thinking. The cheese industry back then was a little bit more traditional. The US has always been a little bit more willing, Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but more willing to try and think outside the box than maybe some European cheese companies.
Yes, that's true. And
Yeah.
also we're not restricted by some of the laws that govern making those cheeses.
Yep. So it's the Wild West of cheese making in the world. And it was totally embraced by us, and we're still to this day trying to find ways to break the rules and have it turn out to be a delicious cheese. We care. That's a big one. Kind of touching on the tone of this year, the current climate. We all got a big shock in March and April, and our first reaction was to keep our employee family completely intact, and we did everything we could to do so. And there were a few people that had to make sacrifices, but they were exclusively the immediate family of Beehive Cheese. The only furloughs happened to my mom, my aunt, and my sister, and they are all back working now. So we do care about what we have and what we've built and the people, and we care about the consumer as well. We care about the people that give us the opportunity to make this cheese. This may not be in the spirit of what you were asking, but we've donated about close to 25,000 pounds of cheese this year to food banks. Actually, no, that's not correct. 125,000 pounds of cheese to food banks this year, through help with different partners who helped us make that possible. So, yeah, a company that actually cares.
That's amazing. That's a lot of cheese to be giving away.
Yeah, if I can explain the logic behind it, we sat in a meeting one day and we were hearing about dairy farmers, and our heart was going out to them they were having to dump milk because schools and restaurants take a very large chunk of the milk produced in this country. And then we're hearing about people losing their jobs and a big need in food banks for people that are going hungry. And we just thought, okay, we have milk that's being dumped on the ground, and we have hungry people. And then we also weren't busy because we were scared. We didn't know what was going to happen. So we had production capability, we had milk being dumped out on the ground, and we had hungry people. So we approached a partnership and said, hey, you're dumping milk, we can produce, and there's people that need food. And the Dairy West was actually the one that pulled all the strings together and got us working full time, producing nothing but cheese that was going to be donated to food banks.